I was holding a paper plate with half-eaten cupcakes when my mother's voice cut through the laughter and clinking of plastic cups. She was standing near the baby gift table, champagne glass in hand, smiling sweetly as she delivered a sentence that punched me in the stomach in front of a room full of family and strangers. "At least this baby has a father," she said, her tone smooth as silk but sharp as glass. A few people chuckled awkwardly, others went silent. My eyes locked with hers for just a second, and I saw it, the cold satisfaction she always wore when she thought she'd put me in my place. Before I could even react, my Aunt Roberta, my mom's sister and her lifelong partner in passive-aggressive warfare, laughed and added, "Unlike her sister's bastard child." Her voice was loud enough to make sure everyone heard it. I froze. The paper plate in my hand bent under the pressure of my grip. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. My 9-year-old son, Kellan, had been just behind me, excitedly hovering near the punch bowl with the small gift bag he'd picked out himself. He heard every word, and before I could blink, before I could collect myself, he walked past me with that bag in his hand, straight toward my mother. "Grandma," he said, voice steady, small fingers gripping the bag tightly. "I got something for you. Dad told me to give you this." The entire room went dead quiet. Let me back up a little. My name is Raina. I'm 28. I'm a single mom, and I've been raising my son, Kellan, on my own since he was a baby. His father, Forrest, died just a year after Kellan was born, complications from a heart condition that came out of nowhere. He passed during a surgery that was supposed to be routine. We were young, we were scared, but we were in love, and when he died, a part of me was buried with him. Since then, it's just been me and Kellan. We've been through it all together. Moving, struggling, late nights, hand-me-downs, scraped knees, laughter in small kitchens. He's my world, and I've done everything in my power to give him a life filled with love, even when my own heart felt broken beyond repair. But my family never saw it that way. They saw a girl who got pregnant too young, a girl who made a mistake, a girl who should have done better, especially my mom, Gwendolyn. She never forgave me for not marrying someone else after Forrest died, for not fixing the shame she thought I brought to her name. To her, being a single mother is worse than being widowed. It's weakness, it's failure, it's proof that I didn't do things the right way. Like my younger sister, Cassia, the golden child, the one who waited, the one who got married, the one who invited me and Kellan to her baby shower with a cute little invite that said, "Auntie Raina and Cousin Kellan." I remember holding that invitation in my hand and feeling hopeful. Maybe this time things would be different. Maybe the past would stay in the past. Maybe we'd be treated like family. We arrived at the shower with a handmade blanket I'd stayed up 3 nights sewing and a book Kellan chose himself, "Love You Forever," because he said he wanted his baby cousin to know how to love their mommy. But none of that mattered once my mother opened her mouth. All it took was 2 sentences, 2 cruel, calculated lines, one from my mother, one from her sister, and in that moment I felt smaller than I'd felt in years. But my son didn't. He didn't cry, he didn't flinch, he didn't hide. He stood up, he walked, he spoke. And what he gave her, what he gave all of them, was something they never expected. That day, my family tried to shame me, but Kellan reminded me who I really am, and what happened next changed everything. The morning of my sister's baby shower started out like any other Saturday. I made pancakes for Kellan, even though I barely slept the night before. He was buzzing with excitement, asking 100 questions about what the baby's name might be, if he'd get to hold it, and whether we could stay long enough to eat cake. I smiled through it all, nodding, laughing, trying to be present, but my stomach was twisted in knots. I didn't want to go. I hadn't wanted to RSVP in the first place. When the pastel pink and gold invitation showed up in my mailbox 3 weeks earlier, I stared at it for a long time. The envelope was addressed to Raina and Kellan, handwritten in Cassia's neat cursive. It was sweet, thoughtful, maybe even genuine. But I knew better than to assume I'd be welcomed just because I was invited. My relationship with my family has always been complicated. My mom, Gwendolyn, raised us with a strict hand and a sharper tongue. Appearances mattered more than anything: reputation, order, respectability. Cassia learned how to play that game early on. I didn't. I never could. I was the rebel, the one who challenged her rules, the one who got pregnant at 19 and shamed her in front of the church. Even after Forrest died, I was never treated with grace. There were no embraces, no casseroles dropped off, no "how are you holding ups," just tight-lipped condolences and sideways glances and, eventually, silence. Still, I showed up because Cassia asked me to, because Kellan wanted to be there, because part of me, maybe the most naive, hopeful part, thought that maybe, just maybe, this could be the start of something different. We spent the night before wrapping gifts. Kellan chose a baby book from the store, Love You Forever. I cried the first time I read that book to him when he was little. He said, "I think this baby should know how to love their mommy." I don't know how a 9-year-old can be that thoughtful, but somehow he always has been. I also spent 3 nights sewing a baby blanket, soft fleece with little ducks on it, neutral, sweet, warm. It wasn't fancy, but it was handmade with love, and I knew Cassia would appreciate it. She always appreciated the things I made, even if our mom never did. The shower was at a local community hall just outside the city. We pulled up in my beat-up Toyota, and Kellan grabbed the gift bag with both hands, careful not to bend it. His little sneakers squeaked as he jogged to the door ahead of me. When we stepped inside, the first thing I saw was how beautiful it all looked. Gold balloons, delicate streamers, little cupcakes with pink frosting, tables lined with glittery confetti, and vases filled with fresh flowers. There was even a banner that read, "Welcome, baby Ilara." I felt a lump in my throat. It was beautiful. It really was. And for a second, I let myself believe we might have a good day. We spent the night before wrapping gifts. Kellan chose a baby book from the store, Love You Forever. I cried the first time I read that book to him when he was little. He said, "I think this baby should know how to love their mommy." I don't know how a 9-year-old can be that thoughtful, but somehow he always has been. I also spent 3 nights sewing a baby blanket, soft fleece with little ducks on it, neutral, sweet, warm. It wasn't fancy, but it was handmade with love, and I knew Cassia would appreciate it. She always appreciated the things I made, even if our mom never did. The shower was at a local community hall just outside the city. We pulled up in my beat-up Toyota, and Kellan grabbed the gift bag with both hands, careful not to bend it. His little sneakers squeaked as he jogged to the door ahead of me. When we stepped inside, the first thing I saw was how beautiful it all looked. Gold balloons, delicate streamers, little cupcakes with pink frosting, tables lined with glittery confetti, and vases filled with fresh flowers. There was even a banner that read, "Welcome, baby Ilara." I felt a lump in my throat. It was beautiful. It really was. And for a second, I let myself believe we might have a good day. Cassia greeted us with a big hug. She looked radiant. Her belly had popped, and she was glowing in a way I never was when I was pregnant. Not because I couldn't, but because I wasn't allowed to feel beautiful. My pregnancy was seen as a stain, not a celebration. I wasn't given parties or presents. I wasn't given joy. But I was happy for her. Honestly, I've never envied my sister's life. Not really. I just wished I didn't feel like a ghost in her world. We found a table near the back. Kellan was immediately drawn to the snack table, especially the punch. I helped him pour a cup, and we stood together for a while, just people watching. I could feel the glances, the quick smiles that didn't reach the eyes. I was used to it. That part didn't surprise me. But what did surprise me was how Kellan didn't seem to notice. Or maybe he did and he just didn't care.
He laughed when someone made a balloon animal, he waved at Cassia when she passed, he clutched that little gift bag in his hands like it held something sacred, and maybe it did. He had tucked something inside that I hadn't seen yet, something he said he wanted to give to Grandma. I didn't ask what it was. I figured it was a picture he drew, maybe a note. I didn't think twice. But I would soon learn that gift wasn't just paper and ink. It was truth, and it was about to tear through decades of shame like a match to dry grass. I remember watching my sister open her gifts one after another, glowing under the soft lighting of the room, her laughter bouncing off the walls. People clapped for tiny outfits, cooed over pacifiers shaped like animals, and awed at diaper cakes wrapped in satin ribbon.
And then it was our turn. Cassia pulled our gift bag toward her. She smiled as she pulled out the baby blanket, the one I spent 3 nights sewing with fingers that were sore and stiff by the end. She unfolded it, ran her hand over the soft fleece, and looked up at me with genuine warmth. "Raina, this is beautiful," she said. Then she reached inside and found the book Kellan had picked. "Love you forever. Oh, this one makes me cry every time," she said, holding it up. "Thank you, Kellan." People gave a light round of polite claps. One woman even muttered, "Sweet," under her breath. But the moment was short-lived, because then my mother stood up with a glass of champagne in her hand and the smile of someone who always saves her sharpest blade for dessert. She cleared her throat. "Before we move on," she said, "I just want to say how proud I am of Cassia." Her voice was syrupy and loud, her words slow and intentional. "She's doing everything right. She waited, she built a home, she married a good man, and now she's bringing a baby into a stable 2-parent family, the way it's supposed to be." There were nods, a few cheers. Some people genuinely agreed. Others seemed unsure. I felt the first sting of shame tighten around my chest. My fingers clenched the edge of the table. Then came the knife. "At least this baby has a father," she added, looking directly at me. My heart stopped. I looked away, pretending to sip punch, pretending I didn't hear her, pretending I wasn't bleeding on the inside. But she knew I heard. Everyone did. And as if that weren't enough, my Aunt Roberta let out a sharp, high-pitched laugh and added, "Unlike her sister's bastard child." The word echoed in my ears. Bastard. It hit me like a brick to the chest. My ears rang. I felt every pair of eyes glance in my direction, then quickly look away. No one said anything. No one stood up for me. Not Cassia, not my cousin, not a single soul. And worst of all, Kellan heard it. I felt his small body stiffen beside me. I turned to look at him. His eyebrows were scrunched, his lips pressed into a thin line. He didn't say anything, but I could see the questions forming in his head. Why would Grandma say that? Why is Aunt Roberta laughing? Why is everyone looking at us like that? I could barely breathe. The pressure in my chest was unbearable, and my throat felt like it was closing. I was humiliated, but more than that, I was furious. Furious at how easily they reduced my son, my bright, kind, beautiful boy, to a slur. I wanted to scream. I wanted to storm out. I wanted to grab the mic and list every sacrifice I'd made to raise Kellan on my own. I wanted to tell them how Forrest, his father, had died trying to survive a condition no one saw coming. I wanted them to choke on the truth. But I didn't say a word, because I knew if I did, they'd spin it as another outburst, another sign that I was emotional, unstable, dramatic. I just sat there numb. And then I saw Kellan stand up. He picked up the small gift bag he had kept aside since we arrived, the one he had labeled "to Grandma" in his blocky 9-year-old handwriting. I reached for him instinctively. "Baby, don't," I whispered, but he shook his head gently, eyes locked on my mom. "I got something for you, Grandma," he said, walking toward her. "Dad told me to give you this." The entire room turned silent. Gwendolyn blinked at him, confused. Her hand lowered the champagne glass as she took the gift from him. Inside that bag was something I didn't even know existed, something Forrest had left behind. And in the next few moments, everything would change.
I watched Kellan walk across the room like the weight of the world wasn't resting on his tiny shoulders. His back was straight, chin up, steps steady. My heart pounded so loudly I could barely hear the whispers already starting to spread through the baby shower. He was just a boy, 9 years old, small for his age, with curly hair that never seemed to stay put, and eyes too wise for someone who still asked for extra marshmallows in his cocoa. He shouldn't have had to carry this moment, but there he was, standing in front of my mother, her grandmother, holding out a small white gift bag with a red bow, as calm as if he were offering her a cookie.
"I got something for you," he said. "Dad told me to give you this." Her perfectly shaped eyebrows lifted slightly. She looked at the bag like it might bite her. Then she glanced over at me, cold, confused, maybe even nervous. I didn't move. I couldn't. My body was frozen in place, but every nerve was screaming. I had no idea what was in that bag. We had packed the baby gift together, the book, the blanket, but that bag? That was something Kellan had packed on his own. He told me it was a surprise. I assumed it was a drawing or maybe a letter, something innocent and sweet. I hadn't checked it because, honestly, I didn't think much of it. Now I realized I should have, because whatever it wasn't just for Grandma. It was a message. My mother took the bag from his hand and pulled out 2 items. The first was a framed photo. She stared at it for a moment, confused, and then her mouth pressed into a thin, hard line. The photo was of me and Forrest, Kellan's father. It had been taken just a few weeks before his surgery. We were sitting on the grass in a park, our hands intertwined over my pregnant belly. I was 19, he was 21. There was so much love in that picture, it hurt to look at. And underneath that photo, folded neatly in half, was a letter, not from Kellan, but from Forrest. She opened it slowly, and I watched her eyes scan the page. I saw something flicker in her expression. Discomfort, maybe even guilt. It was brief, but I caught it. That letter was something Forrest had written before his surgery, just in case. I didn't know Kellan had it. I barely remembered it existed. He must have found it in the shoebox where I kept old letters and photos. I hadn't opened it in years. I couldn't bring myself to. But my son had, and somehow he had known that this moment, this one, was the right time for it. My mother read silently, but I could imagine every word. Forrest had written about how proud he was of me, how scared he was that he might not come back, but how sure he was that I would be an amazing mother no matter what happened. He called Kellan our miracle. He told me that no matter how the world judged me, I should never forget that I was enough, more than enough, and that anyone who made me feel otherwise was wrong. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't angry, it was pure. And for the first time in a very long time, I saw the people in that room stop and look at me differently. No one spoke. Even Aunt Roberta, queen of smug comments, had nothing to say. Then Kellan, my little boy, looked right at my mother and said, "He loved me. He loved my mom. That means I'm not a mistake." There was no anger in his voice, no shame, just truth. And in that moment, the power in the room shifted, not in a loud, explosive way, but in a quiet, undeniable way. My mother blinked quickly, lips parting like she wanted to say something, but nothing came out. She just stood there, holding a letter from the son-in-law she had never acknowledged, forced to face the reality she spent nearly a decade pretending didn't exist. Kellan turned around and walked back to me. I knelt down and hugged him so tightly I thought I might never let go. I didn't have to fight back. He already did it for me. That moment, that simple, brave act, cracked the facade my mother had built around me for years. And even if she didn't crumble right away, she wasn't in control anymore. My mother stood there, still holding the letter and the photo, as if she didn't know what to do with her hands. And maybe she didn't. For the first time I could remember, Gwendolyn looked small, not powerful, not in control, just caught, staring into a truth she couldn't rewrite. That room full of pastel decorations and polite family politics gone completely silent. I could feel the air shift.
People were uncomfortable, unsure whether to look at me or away. My Aunt Roberta had her lips pressed so tight they turned white. She tried to glance at my mother, waiting for her to make some kind of joke, some dismissive shrug, something to brush this off like they always did, but none came. The photo was still in her hand, shaking just slightly. It was a clear picture. Forrest's smile, warm, boyish, full of life, stared right back at her. My own younger face beside him, full of love, unaware of what was coming.
She knew exactly who he was. She had just chosen to erase him. Forrest hadn't fit her version of what a real man should be. He wasn't rich, he wasn't raised in church, he was kind, gentle, a musician who believed in dreams over money. He had held my hand through pregnancy appointments, written lullabies to my growing belly, and cried the first time he heard Kellan's heartbeat. But to her, that didn't count, because he died, because we didn't get married, because we didn't follow her rules, and because I didn't remarry someone more acceptable. Afterward, she decided his love and my son didn't matter. Now she was face to face with a letter that proved her narrative had been a lie, and everyone saw it. I watched my cousin Marlo slowly lower her phone, which she had been recording with, not out of malice, but instinct. She whispered to her friend, "Did you hear what that little boy just said?" Another guest near the punch table muttered, "That was powerful." Even Cassia, my sister, was crying. Not sobbing, not dramatically, just quiet tears that rolled down her cheeks as she sat with her hands in her lap, staring at her mother with a look I couldn't quite place. Disappointment, maybe, or maybe just realization. And then Kellan, still standing beside me, said one more thing, loud enough for the whole room to hear. My dad died, but he was real, and he loved me. And my mom? That's what matters. Simple words, nothing fancy, but they were everything, and the way he said them, without shame, without fear, made something break open inside me. I stood up slowly, brushing crumbs off my lap. My hands were shaking, but I didn't hide it this time. I looked at Gwendolyn. She still hadn't moved, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel the need to make her comfortable. I didn't apologize for the awkward silence. I didn't shrink. I didn't try to soften the moment with a smile or a joke. I just stood there, tall, visible, whole, and I said, "You don't ever get to speak about my son like that again." She blinked. Her lips parted, maybe to protest, maybe to defend herself. But I kept going. "You ignored him because you hated how he came into this world. But you forgot one thing. He didn't ask to be here. We chose him. His father loved him. I love him. He's not a mistake. He's the best thing that ever happened to me." I wasn't yelling. My voice wasn't loud, but it didn't need to be. The truth didn't need a megaphone. I reached for Kellan's hand. He took it without hesitation. And then I turned to Cassia. "Congratulations," I said softly. "Really, I hope your child is surrounded by love. All kinds of love, even the kind that doesn't fit in neat little boxes." She nodded. She tried to speak, but the words caught in her throat. We walked out together, hand in hand, with every eye in the room following us, not out of pity or curiosity, but something else, respect. No one stopped us, not even my mother. And as we stepped into the sunlight outside that baby shower, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time, peace. The car ride home was quiet, but it wasn't heavy. Kellan sat in the back seat, humming a tune under his breath, legs swinging as he stared out the window. I kept glancing at him in the mirror, this little person who somehow carried the weight of generational shame and didn't let it break him. When we pulled into our apartment complex, I parked the car and just sat there with the engine off, my hand still on the wheel. "Are you mad I gave Grandma the letter?" he asked softly. I turned around to face him. "Mad?" I said. "No, baby, I'm not mad." He looked down. I didn't like what she said. I wanted her to know my dad was real. Tears welled up before I could stop them. I reached back and cupped his cheek. "You did something really brave. I'm so proud of you." And I meant it, not just for what he did, but for how he reminded me of something I'd forgotten. I wasn't broken. I wasn't less than. I wasn't defined by who stayed or who left or who died. I was defined by the life I built. Anyway, The next day, I found the shoebox where Kellan had taken the letter and photo from. I hadn't opened it in years. It was tucked in the back of my closet, full of things I didn't let myself look at anymore. Ultrasound pictures, Forrest's hospital bracelet, the receipt from the first crib we bought together. I sat on my bedroom floor with that box and cried for the first time in a long time. Not because I was sad, not because I missed Forrest, although I did deeply, but because I finally let myself feel everything I'd pushed down for so long. I had spent years trying to be invisible. I kept my head down, smiled politely, bit my tongue every time someone made a comment about how I should have waited, or how a child needs a father. But that day at the baby shower, something changed. It wasn't just about the letter. It wasn't even about my mother's cruel words. It was about finally seeing myself through Kellan's eyes, the same eyes that never saw me as a failure or a burden, or someone who needed to be fixed. He saw me as his mom, the person who taught him how to make grilled cheese and checked under his bed for monsters, and held him through every storm. And he was proud of me. That was enough. In the weeks that followed, I didn't hear much from my mother. She sent a text a few days later. That was unnecessary. We could have handled it privately. I didn't respond. Roberta never reached out. But something surprising happened. My cousin Marlo, the one who had recorded the moment, messaged me and said, "I just want you to know that was powerful. I think you're an amazing mom." She wasn't the only one. People I hadn't spoken to in years sent messages. Some shared their own stories about being single parents or about having families that never accepted them. A woman I barely knew from church DM'd me and said, "That little boy of yours, he's a light. You did that." It didn't erase the pain. It didn't rewrite the years I'd spent aching for validation from people who refused to give it. But it helped me let go of needing it. I started therapy, not because I was falling apart, but because I finally wanted to build something new, something solid for myself, for Kellan. I also started writing, journaling at first, then short essays. I didn't know what I'd do with them, maybe nothing, maybe everything, but putting the truth into words without filters, without fear, felt like reclaiming something I didn't even realize I'd lost. And Cassia, she called a week after the shower. She cried. She apologized. She said she hadn't known what to say in the moment and that she hated herself for staying quiet. I told her the truth. I don't need you to defend me. I need you to stop being silent. We're rebuilding slowly, carefully, because healing isn't about forgetting. It's about choosing who gets to come with you when you decide to stop surviving and start living. So here I am, not perfect, not polished, but free. And when I look at Kellan, his whole life ahead of him, heart still open, I know this. I didn't raise a mistake. I raised a mirror. And when he stood up for me, I finally saw who I really was.